Rosalind Jordan live for us now in Washington, D.C. It is important to distinguish between what is happening on the ground in Iraq and Syria. And in terms of the different approach, this is strikingly different in Iraq. Am I right?
That's right, David, and that's because the Iraqi government wants U.S. troops to be helping with the effort to move ISIL off its territory. So you have people who are basically working in the open with the support and consent of the ruling government, and they are able then to provide really hands-on training and support and more intelligence gathering than they otherwise would be able to do. The difference is that in Syria, the president has approved a plan to send in special operating forces there, but they're doing so without the consent of the government of President Bashar al-Assad, and that has been something that has angered Assad since the U.S.-led coalition started airstrikes more than a year ago. But even though we don't know yet when these special forces might be deployed to Syria, the idea is that if the airstrike campaign is going to be clearing the way of ISIL and making it possible for moderate Syrian fighters and for members of the Kurdish Peshmerga to try to retake the territory, the idea is that these special operating forces would make it easier for these groups to actually hold the territory, because that's the really big problem. It's one thing to clear the enemy out of the way. It's another thing to hold on to the territory and defend it.
Ros, I think I'm right in saying that there were something like 50 special forces announced as working inside Syria. This is new about Iraq. Do we have any idea about the expanded operation in terms of numbers in Syria and the number of forces that might be going into Iraq?
We don't know yet how many forces are going to be deployed to either country. As you noted, there are about 50 or so special operating forces inside Syria right now. It is worth reminding our audience that there are about 3,500 or so U.S. troops inside Iraq for the express purpose of training and providing assistance, intelligence gathering, and other sorts of support to the Iraqi military, as well as working with local Sunni militias to help improve their capabilities, particularly as the fight for Ramadi seems to be almost at hand. But we don't know, again, how many numbers, and certainly they would want to try to keep that number a bit of a surprise so that the members of ISIL and those who are supporting them wouldn't be able to somehow outflank them and render them ineffective.
So a new force inside Iraq, an expanded force potentially in Syria, and that expanded force, according to Ash Carter, will be able to free hostages, and I'm taking just a little bit of what he said here, free hostages, gather intelligence and capture ISIL leaders. Is that very different to the current policy?
It's very different, mainly because when you have more people, they're more capable of doing all of those things which the Defense Secretary listed. Right now, what they're having to do is rely wholly on members of the moderate Syrian opposition, including some people that some in the U.S. government don't particularly care for, don't trust, think actually pose a security threat to U.S. national security interests. This is actually taking more hands-on control. It's a controversial moving ahead, as it were, because there still has not been a decision here on Capitol Hill on whether the U.S. should actually be conducting this operation with a legal cover over it. There's also the question of whether the U.S. public would support an increased military presence in Iraq or inside Syria, especially if they don't know what the result of all of this military action is supposed to be. But it definitely is pushing that envelope, and it's something which the Obama administration has decided needs to be done, especially in the wake of the Paris attacks.